but thank you for coming out. It's a worthwhile presentation. We're talking a lot of topics here. Kate and Brian are going to talk about opioids, vaping. They're going to touch on a lot of things, but and I ask that you just put the phones down for about 45 minutes, pay attention to what's going on, because in some way this disease affects all of us. Okay, I know I'm going through it with a member of my family that's hooked on opioids, and even though it's not me directly, it affects the family, and you're going to hear about all that. So stay tuned. At the end there are some prizes, so that's always the highlight. But I'd ask that you give Kate and Brian your attention, and we'll go from there. All right, thank you.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are we doing?
Great.
Good. So before we start today's presentation, I wanted to see, both Brian and I wanted to see if you could beat the last school that we were at. What do we mean by that? 3 things. If you can be on your best behavior, which I think you got that in the bag. 2, pay attention. And 3, try to be as quiet as you can. So we like to engage.
Tell them what the last school was, because
The last school is Middletown High School. He says they were so good, so I don't know. You're going to have to show us. So if you're able to do those 3 things, then both Brian and I are going to decide if we'll actually raffle off a grand prize, which we did not raffle off there. So if you are beating them, then we will do that. So let's see how it goes, all right? And I like to believe that they're really good. So I'm a little biased, by the way. I'm also an alum of Middletown High School North. So, all right, so just a little bit about myself. My name is Kate. I have a lot of experience with this particular topic of opioids. I used to be a drug and alcohol counselor, and right now I work in prevention of drug and alcohol use in Monmouth County. So what we do is we do what we're doing now. We educate, we bring materials, and we also provide resources. How can you get help? What are things that you should know? What are things that you should look out for? All right, so here we go. One of the first things that I wanted to ask before I get into this video is, how many of you know what opioids are? Hold them up high, because I'm impressed if you even know what that word means. Okay, a couple of you, awesome, okay. So I want to see how much we're learning here today by the time I'm done and pass the mic over to Brian. Okay, so I have a video that I'm going to show.
Why do high school students play high school sports? As a way to belong.
They want to be part of a team, friendship, teammates, and camaraderie.
Attention, fame, success.
Part of my job, and the thing I hate the most about my job, is having to talk to parents that have lost a son or a daughter to opioid addiction, and I don't want to do that. So that's why I think it's important to get the message out. If I can just prevent one death, I mean, I've done my job.
Well, what scares us the most and why we're trying to reach high school athletes is because the DEA came out with these stats that if you're age 15 to 24, you're more likely to die from a fentanyl-related overdose in 2016 than in 2015. And based on the stats from the coroner's offices and what we're seeing, it's getting worse.
Every year, it's over 10,000 people are dying from an opioid medication. When people are first introduced to opioids, like as early as 14 years of age, with sports-related injuries in schools and with getting their wisdom teeth removed. Well, when somebody gets injured, they're usually prescribed an opioid medication, and what they don't realize is these medications are very addictive. So they take these medications, and it does do away with the pain, but somehow they become addicted to these medications, and they need more and more of these medications. They like the way that makes them feel, and unfortunately that just leads them on a downward spiral path.
Most people who get addicted without realizing it. Typically what happens is over time you go from needing the medication or drug or using it for fun to starting to need it simply to feel normal, and then when you don't get it, you start to feel sick and feel terrible, and that's what happens with addiction. So opioids don't help to treat an injury at all. All they do is essentially mask or cover up the pain that you feel because of an injury.
It's just really scary because this epidemic knows no demographic and it's redefining our world.
I was the kind of kid that, any parent wanted their daughters to date. I was a great student, I was an extraordinary athlete. But when I first took a painkiller when I broke my neck, neck, I like the feeling. I didn't think anything of it. I thought, it hides the pain, it masks the pain, and it gives me a little bit of a euphoric feeling, makes me feel more energetic. But after a while, I continuously kept injuring my neck, and the painkillers wouldn't work as much. I was building a tolerance. So 1 turned to 2, 2 turned to 4, 4 turned to 8, 8 turned to 16. Before I knew it, within 6 months, I was taking 65 extra strength Vicodin a day. It was a very expensive habit, and it got me into the turmoil of addiction.
That's one of the risks of opioids is you may not feel an injury that's developing or worsening because it's covered by the opioid. And at the same time, as you're rehabilitating an injury, opioids may mask those clues and keys that we need to have to know that we're definitely improving.
The drug is the lazy way of masking the pain. A lot of people don't want to go through the work. And I don't blame them. I mean, when you have a pill and you have all this work you have to go do and you have an option, you're gonna take that little pill. And the issue is, if you don't want your life to go into turmoil, and you don't want to affect your life or anyone else's, and you don't want to end up dying, the only option is doing the work.
What we know is that if we can educate younger adolescents and younger adults about the dangers to stop the initiation of opioid use, that long term we hope to see less use and less damage done to individuals and their families as a result. We have to help people to feel like they can ask for help without feeling judged.
It's really up to us to make this decision of, do we want it to get worse or do we want it to get better? It's time to help each other.
Can I throw a personal experience?
Absolutely.
The other day? Most of you know me, I've been here for 7 years, but prior to that, I was at New Egypt High School. And the reason it's not shock value or anything like that, but I've talked to a lot of groups like this. And I talked to, about 10 years ago, a group just like this. And within the past 12 months, I've gone to 2 funerals based on the opioids, and they had fentanyl overdose and things like that. So again, these are young people that are maybe 8, 10 years older than you that sat in this seat not too long ago, and not too long, soon after that, I was going to a funeral. So it is a personal, and it will, I think they talk about it here, it will affect all of you in some way, either directly or indirectly. So sorry, I wanted to add that.
Thank you for sharing, that's great. Okay, so, and just to kind of go off that a little bit, I'm going to share a little bit of personal experience as well. I lost a brother back in 2013 to an accidental overdose. He went to Mater Dei High School. He was a fantastic pitcher. He played football. He got a scholarship to Louisiana. And it was more of a mental health thing for him. No, he didn't get injured and get hooked to prescription drugs, but mentally he was suffering. And in order to, just like, what's his name, Kurt Angle in that video or something? Just like he was saying, is it easier to take a drug and get rid of that pain, whether it's physical or mentally, or is it easier to do the work? What do you guys think?
Drug.
Yeah. So it's really important to put in the work. And I just wanted to share that with you because I will be going into that and relating that with you throughout the presentation. So really quick, and I just want to see, how many people do we have here that are soccer players? Nice. Okay. Awesome. And how about in the back? What do we got?
Gymnast.
Gymnasts. Okay, awesome. Well, welcome. Okay, so I wanted to ask you a question. What do you think opioids are? Painkillers. Great job. I feel like the whole, that was like a group effort right there. That was a strong answer.
13.
Okay, so I'm just going to name a couple of opioid medications that maybe you've heard of, and maybe some of you have used, maybe some of your friends have used, maybe somebody in your family has used. It might be a little bit familiar, or maybe not familiar at all. So opioids, okay, if there's any pain going on in the body, what they do is they help the receptors in our brain who feel that pain, they kind of stop us from feeling that pain, okay? And there are times where opioid medication is needed. Can somebody raise their hand and give me an example of when an opioid medication would be needed for somebody? What was that? Torn ACL. Absolutely, that's a very, very big injury, right? So when there's intense and extreme surgeries, right? Of course, or if somebody has severe issues going on, maybe it's cancer related and they're in a lot of excruciating pain. But we don't always have to use these addictive drugs when we are in pain. How many of you have ever used Motrin before? I have, right? What about ibuprofen? Well, research shows us that when we combine the two, it actually is just as effective as releasing pain, just as these very addictive prescription drugs. So this is really important for us to know, because what I'm saying right now is that if you don't have that serious of an injury like a torn ACL, right, then you don't have to take these addictive medications. How many of you have gotten your wisdom teeth taken out? I have. You're not there yet. Great. So I got you early. Perfect. So what I'm about to tell you is really important. Dentists will prescribe, not all of them, but some of them will prescribe addictive medication to help relieve the pain that you may or may not feel when you get your wisdom teeth taken out. You don't have to take that. Like I said, Motrin and ibuprofen combined can what? Have the same effect. Awesome. You guys are already nailing it. I don't know. I know you said that South was great, but
Not that great.
So, I want to go over what some of the effects are of these drugs. Can anybody, before I do that, can anybody name one?
Some withdrawals after you take it for a while.
Absolutely. Some people who take opioids, that she knows that's worthy of an incentive right now. Yes, so opioids, okay, some people who take them get addicted, right? Meaning that they're taking them, their body's getting dependent on it, their mind is getting dependent on it, and when they don't take it, they withdraw. And what I mean by that is now their body and their mind is saying, okay, well, where did that go? Because I want it and now I don't feel good. So some of the other things, it can cause confusion, nausea, vomiting, constipation, sleepiness, and sometimes, like we've heard, in Monmouth County right now, we have a very serious issue with opioids. And what's happening is that a lot of people are addicted to them as well as heroin, and unfortunately, they're losing their lives over it. So what that means is when you take a lot of this medication, what it does is it suppresses our central nervous system. And what I mean by that is it starts, you know how your heart races? Do you guys know how many beats your heart beats in a minute?
120.
Okay, awesome. See?
120.
120. So when we take a lot of this type of medication, guess what happens? It slows down because it's sending a signal to your body that it doesn't have to work as hard. So your heart doesn't have to race as often. Your lungs don't have to breathe as often. And unfortunately, that's how an overdose can happen. So, can somebody give me an example of what opioid prescription misuse would look like? What do I mean by that? Anybody? Wild educated guest? I'm going to tell you. Let's say you get a prescription from a doctor and it tells you to take one pill, every 4 to 6 hours? If you start to take 2 every hour, or you're misusing the directions, you're not following the directions, you are misusing that drug. If you take someone else's medication, their prescription medication, their opioids, right? You're also misusing that drug, and so is the person who's giving that medication to you. Why? It's not your medication. Why? A doctor has no knowledge that you're taking that, right? They didn't prescribe that to you. Taking prescription drugs to get high. How many of you have heard of people, you don't have to name them, people taking pills to get high? Yeah, okay? That's called misusing prescription drugs, okay? This is a risk. This is a red flag. You know how they throw flags out in football? Okay? That's a flag that you should pay attention to. And it may be for yourself, I'm not saying it's anyone here, but it also may be for someone you know, a friend, a relative, okay? When you see some of this stuff going on, that's a red flag to look out for. Mixing prescription drugs with alcohol. Why do you think that's dangerous? How? Why? Why is the combination more dangerous? One is not actually an upper, but that's a great point that you bring up. They're both downers. Alcohol, people believe, okay, alcohol, a lot of people drink alcohol, right? Because they get a release, right? It kind of helps them socially. Have you heard this? Is this making sense? Okay. So some people perceive that to be an upper because they feel more social, and they might have not been as social if they didn't drink. However, have some of you ever seen somebody drink a lot of alcohol and all of a sudden it's a whole different story? It's not a really fun time. I have, okay? Alcohol is a depressant, okay? And what we know about these prescription drugs is they're also a depressant. They are both signaling to your body to shut down and slow down. That's why your reactions are slower. People start to not talk the same, right? They kind of start slurring their words, right? They might drop stuff. They might be what we call nodding out. They look like they're falling asleep, okay? It's telling the body to it's okay to shut down. And just to share with all of you, my brother who had overdosed, he was found with 6 fentanyl patches on his body and alcohol and Xanax in his system. That's 3 downers, okay? Very, very dangerous stuff. Can somebody raise their hand and tell me what you think addiction is?
When your body needs something to survive.
When your body needs something to survive. That's a great way of putting it. Because when you keep taking the medication or the drug or the alcohol, right, your body's getting used to having that in its system. Okay? So addiction means a person has no control over whether he or she uses a drug or drinks. Someone who is addicted to, for instance, cocaine, has grown so used to the drug that she or he has to have it. Addiction can be physical, it can be mental, and it can be both. Any questions about that? So I'm gonna okay, so we're gonna get into a little bit of some data here. So every day, more than 130 people in the United States die after overdosing on opioids. That's a lot of people. 2.14 million people ages 12 to 16, 12 and older had an opioid use disorder in 2016. So what that tells us when we look at this is that, hey, you're not immune to this, right? Adolescents, teens, whatever you want to call it, young adults. My group, okay, I graduated Middletown North in 2009. You can do the math on how old I am if you want. My group, the age depth bracket that I'm in, is really, really, really affected by this issue. So what that tells me is, yeah, maybe when you're in high school, you might hear it, you might see it, you might know the people. It might be in the school, it might be at home, it might be at someone else's home, but we're not immune to it. You're gonna see it. And it may not be right now, but you're gonna see it when you leave here. This isn't going anywhere. So 2017 stats tell us that 8 people die of a drug overdose per day in New Jersey. So this data can change because every year it's changing, okay? So it fluctuates a couple of people per day. So it could be 6, 7, 8 people in New Jersey have died per day of a drug overdose. This came from Monmouth County, right here in our own county from the prosecutor's office. Just looking over here, it shows you 2017, 2018, and the year that we're currently in, 2019. So drug overdose deaths went up from 2017 to 2018. In 2017, there were 172 people just in Monmouth County alone who died of an overdose. It went up last year to 214. And as of today, we have 45 deaths in Monmouth County. How many of you have ever heard of Narcan?
I was gonna say Narcan, yes.
Okay, good amount of you. Can somebody tell me what it is? Yes.
So it's put it on them, like resurrect them. Oh, yeah.
You put it on them and it resurrects them. You're definitely on to something.
It's like a nose spray.
It's a nose spray, correct. Yes, they've advanced. So Narcan helps people, okay, who overdose by reversing the overdose, okay? So you know how we were saying when you take these medications or you're taking heroin, kind of attaches onto those receptors in our brain and kind of says, okay, you don't feel that pain anymore. Well, when someone administers Narcan, it basically pulls that off, okay? So that they can, like you said, be resurrected in a sense, right? They come out of the overdose. So this is helping people stay alive. But do you think it's correcting the problem? No, why not?
They still don't keep doing it.
They'll keep doing it. Yes. I have worked with people who have overdosed. They got Narcan twice, and then when they got to the hospital, they were on a Narcan drip. They came into detox, where they come to get off of all of the drugs, left detox, and went back out to use heroin the next day. Because there's a lot of stuff going on up here that you need the time to work on when you get to the point of addiction. So one thing I just wanted to talk to you about is that prescription drugs, right? How did we get to this heroin epidemic that we have right now in the United States, and it's in Monmouth County? How did we get there? Well, back in the 90s, pharmaceutical companies kind of sent this message saying, hey, these opioids, prescribe them. They're not as dangerous. It's okay. And guess what happened? They are dangerous. They're highly, highly addictive. And that's one reason why we're here today. What we know is that teenagers, young adults, they're getting these drugs for the first time from a family or friend. And that's why we want to tell you it's so important to be careful, okay? If you see a friend, if you see a family member and you know that this is what they're doing, what do you think you should do? You see a family member or a friend going to use someone else's medication from their medicine cabinet, what do you think you should do? Tell an adult. What do we say over there?
I said tell somebody.
Tell somebody, tell an adult. We got two. That's awesome. Absolutely. And I know sometimes we get this mentality of we don't want to be a rat, but you could possibly be saving that person's life. So that's an awesome thing. One thing I also wanted to look at. Now I want to kind of take a step away from opioids and I want to focus on alcohol. Okay, I just want to show you some information on this. Athletes who drink regularly are more than twice as likely to be injured, okay, compared to non-drinkers. It takes 3 to 4 days for athletes to restore B vitamins depleted by alcohol. And I'll give you one more. One night of excessive drinking wipes out the impact of 2 weeks of training. This is pretty wild stuff. Because anything that we're putting into our bodies affects us more than we know. Did you know that when you drink alcohol, and let's just say you had 1 glass of wine, 1 beer, okay, or 1 mixed drink, that it affects you the next day, and you only had 1. It could kind of give you somebody anxiety, just 1. The next day you might not feel like yourself. The next day you might not be as happy as you were yesterday, because these effects are happening. So, what should you know? Why do you think addiction is a family disease? Because when kids see their parents doing it, they think it's okay. That is a really important message. Great job. So yes, there are times where kids see their parents doing it and they think that this is normal, that this is okay. But then there are also kids who see that and they feel embarrassed, okay? They feel nervous, they feel scared, they can't rely on that parent, right, to do what they need to do. They don't feel so safe sometimes. But what it also means is that you can have one person in your house who might be addicted to drugs or alcohol, and it could affect every single person in that house. So what I want you to walk away with today is I want you to know some of the risk factors that could lead to addiction, okay? Because the more education that you have in this life, the better off you'll be. So if there are past addictions in your family, meaning grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, cousins, I'm talking like a family tree. I looked at my family tree and all I'm gonna say was terrifying. And it sent a message to me saying, whoo, I better be careful. I better be careful. And if I see any of these risk factors happening or if I feel anything with myself, I need to go and ask for help, okay? So another thing, mental health, okay? Depression, anxiety, if you have that, if a family member has that, that's something just to hold on to. It does not mean that you're gonna be addicted to anything. You might not. Most likely you might not, okay? But what it does mean is you need to pay attention to it, okay? Exposure to peer pressure. Honestly, how many of you have ever experienced peer pressure before? I know I have. None of you?
They all have.
Give me an example of peer pressure.
When like all your friends are doing it and you don't want to do something and they make you do it basically.
Yes. You want to know what we don't realize is that sometimes peer pressure happens and nobody actually said anything. What does that mean?
Bad friends.
Bad friends. Okay. I'm going to give you an example. You walk into a party, everybody's drinking, and you feel, I guess I have to drink. Nobody said, here's this drink, you have to drink it, right? You kind of walked into a situation and you just naturally felt the pressure to be like, well, I guess I'll just grab a drink. That's peer pressure. We all experience peer pressure since we were in elementary school and beyond. Lack of knowledge about prescription drugs. Why do you think it's important to know about this stuff? How many of you right now just learned something already today? Awesome. The more that you educate yourself, the better off you can make great decisions for your future. And let me tell you one thing, this is the only thing I promise that I'm going to kind of be preachy about. Take care of yourself. You are all worth it. The way you feel, what you want to do in life, your purpose, if you have a goal, know that you are able to get there. Know that you are totally worth that. And take care of yourself, because guess what? You can take care of yourself the best way, better than anybody else can do for you. How many of you volunteer? A couple of you. What do you guys do?
I went to the library.
You went to the library and volunteered?
Yes.
Middletown Library?
Yes.
How about you? What else do you do for volunteering?
Also, it was like this thing on the beach. I guess the beach like special surfing.
Oh, wow. So you're a surfer too?
It's like the Best Day Foundation.
That's really cool. You did the same thing?
No, soccer.
Oh, soccer. Okay. That's awesome. Why do you think it's important to give back to your community and to volunteer? For yourself, I'm asking. Why would it be good for yourself when you volunteer? Makes you feel better, right? Makes you feel like you're doing something, okay? That's important. I encourage all of you to volunteer. If you actually want to volunteer and get some hours and put that on your resume, come talk to me after this presentation, because I can help you out with that. Okay, what are some of the signs and symptoms that somebody is under the influence of opioids? There's a lot. There's a lot. Some of the things that I want to point out. If somebody is finishing their prescription drugs before they're supposed to, you may or may not know that information. But let's just say you see somebody's behavior off. Like, that's not how they normally are. That's kind of weird. They might be a little bit, their mood might be up and down, and you're like, that's strange. He or she usually doesn't act like that. She kind of never acts like that. I don't know, something's off, something's off. Stick with that, because guess what? That's another red flag. And it might just mean they're having a bad day, right? But it's something just to pay attention to. Okay. Missing classes, practices, or games. Okay? When I was in school, I'm not going to say what school, because I've been to college and all that kind of stuff, I noticed a friend who was really suffering with an opioid issue. And they didn't complete that year. That was a huge red flag to me. So it happens. It really, really does. Poor academic performance. How are their grades? Do they care about school? Are they just like, you know what, I don't even care, you know what? What do their eyes look like? You see in the first picture where it's pinned, okay? You think your eyes are always supposed to look like that? No. Sometimes that can happen when people are looking into the sun. You know, there's some things that are happening why that could, you know, be okay. But it's also something to look at. Is somebody really drowsy, really tired? You know, these are signs that somebody could be possibly under the influence of opioids. Have they lost a lot of weight or gained weight? That's also something to look out for. Are they lying a lot? Are you catching that person, whether it's a friend, a family member, or somebody in your class, or somebody that's just out there that you kind of hang with from time to time? You're catching them in a lot of lies and stuff. They're not being honest. They're being very sneaky. That's also a sign. So, how can you prevent the use and misuse of opioids? One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about very quickly is to treat pain cautiously. How many of you have ever been injured before? What's one of the injuries that you've had? Sprained your left toe. Hey, that still counts. How about you?
I got surgery. Oh, sorry.
Surgery on your knee. Cracked a part of your spine. How about in the back?
Sprained my ankle.
Sprained your ankle. Okay. What I mean by treating pain cautiously is that we're all going to feel pain in life, right? Whether it's now when you're in high school or way beyond that, okay? Be careful about what you're using to treat that pain. There's a lot of other alternatives, which Brian is going to get into, that you can use in order to treat that pain in a non-addictive way. Having a trusted adult. How many of you have one trusted adult in your life? One trusted friend? Good. Good. Why do you think it's important to have a trusted adult in your life?
Someone to turn to.
Someone to turn to.
They can stop you if you're not going to do something.
Right. So how many of you have ever been in a situation where you're looking for feedback and you go to your friends and you tell them about the situation and they're like hyping you up and they're like, yeah, you know what? You should go and you're like, yeah, I'm right, right? And they're like, yeah, you are, right? Do you think that's 100% factual?
No.
A lot of the times we might not like what adults have to tell us, but they're there because sometimes they've experienced it, sometimes they haven't, but they're also able to do something that when we're teens, they're really good at kind of like thinking things through a little bit more than us sometimes. Like, you know, when we're like, yeah, we're really excited, let's just do it. And we're like, well, that was dumb. I just hurt myself, right? So it's really important to have a trusted adult in your life, someone to turn to, someone to talk to. Okay, so one thing that I want to leave you guys with for your future, how many of you have a goal for yourself right now? Okay, well, this table's hot and heavy over here, okay. A lot of goals, love it. In the back, still figuring it out? Okay, just know goals could be short term. They could be like, hey, I just want to graduate high school. That's a goal, right? Or something is like, hey, I want to be a vet, right? I encourage you, in order to stay on track, right, have goals. Try to achieve them. Okay, think about it. What do you value in life? Who are you surrounding yourself with? Do they have the same values as you? How many of you have ever realized like some of your values are, you know, respect, loyalty, trust, all that kind of hard working? How many of you, like, that's, you know, you had a value that meant something to you and then you met somebody and you realized we don't have the same values at all? I have. Raise your hand. Be honest. Yeah. Well, my key to you is surround yourself with people who have similar values, that really care. If you like respect and you like to respect others, surround yourself with people who do the same, who treat you that way. Okay? What is your purpose in life? Finding to have a sense of belonging, giving back, volunteering. One other thing that I'm going to leave you with. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. This is really, really hard. This is a hard request. But I'm going to tell you right now that if I didn't reach out for help when I was your age, or even younger actually, as young as elementary school, I wouldn't be who I am today. So I give a lot of credit to the counselors that were in the schools that I went to, because I definitely utilized them, even when I was in college. Okay? It's okay. It's okay to talk about your feelings. It's okay to talk to an adult about something. That's okay. And I encourage you to do that. I'm done now. So thank you. I'm passing this torch to Brian. Good job.
I'm a physical therapist, so I encourage movement. Stand up for a second. Move a little bit. Hold it for a while. Let's go. All right. Now I'm going to ask you to sit down, and this must be the healthiest gymnastic table in the world, because every time I see gymnastics people, they are coming off some brutal injuries. So shout out to you guys. Yeah. We have one there. I have a sports therapist who's very, very good. She was Olympics in Czechoslovakia. And she sees, there's a place at Old Bridge, so she sees a couple athletes from there. And I tell you, torn labrum, fractured metacarpal, dislocated shoulder. She's 15 years old. I'm saying, oh my God, this is a tough sport. You know, I only see it at the Olympics time. So, all right. So why are you protected right now? And you're in a good spot in your life. You think bad things could happen to you? Once you leave the hallowed grounds of Middletown North. By the way, I went to Raritan Hills picture. No, it didn't. Actually, Middletown had a great team when I played there. Really good team. Once you leave here, there's things out there that can happen. Okay? But one of the reasons you're protected now, first of all, you have a highly trained healthcare professional somewhere in this building almost all the time, your athletic trainer. They know how to get you back on the field. They specialize that. They also know what the red flags are. So you're protected. And you're extremely active. This is huge. This is, you got to put this in the back pocket for the rest of your life, because most of the people I treat, most of the people I see, I cover the emergency room as a physical therapist, have lost a lot of function, okay? It makes them susceptible to things. You know what's waiting down the road? 20% of the adult population in the United States has chronic pain. 40% is obese. 1 out of 3 of you is predicted to have diabetes by the CDC, okay? So, how do you get rid of this stuff? You were depressed before? Yeah. This is how you get rid of this stuff. You stay as active as possible, okay? Physical activity, okay? That's a doctor in the emergency room. That's what I cover. I see people come into the emergency room in irretractable pain. Wasn't that many years ago? We used to say, whack them, you know, which meant get them Dilaudid. Okay, they hit a euphoric state. I can get anyone walking out of the emergency room when they're like that. Doesn't do any good. We don't do that anymore. We give them IV Tylenol. Works it's very efficient. Okay. Over-the-counter meds can help a lot. I'm afraid of Motrin. Okay, it helps when you use it. But remember, these are medications. Okay, and you can't live on them. One aspirin screws up your platelets for 3 days. Tylenol is tough on your liver. Motrin has to be cleared by your kidneys. Those are the things that are important. This is one of the things that we really don't do well in America. We don't encourage group or club activities. This is Australia. In Australia, they have, quote, club sports, okay? Physical activity, modern physical activity, is a very good treatment for modest depression. I'm sure you saw that commercial on the Super Bowl where it said, go for a long walk in the woods and you can cure your depression. You're never going to see that. There's no money in that, okay? But you have to take care of yourself. Physical activity, I'm talking physical activity. I'm not talking exercise, okay? Right now, you guys are trained athletes. You're working very hard. If you're working at United Parcel Service at night and unloading tractor trailers or loading package cars, are you physically active? Yeah. Do you need to get on the elliptical afterwards? Probably not, okay? Remember, a lot of the things you see in the gym are artificial activity, okay? Physical activity in the brain, there's some studies that says it lowers the Alzheimer's percent by about 60%, and about a 20-minute walk every day has a significant reduction in stroke, okay, and cardiovascular disease. Now, these are just modest things. One of the reasons for that is, I think all of you here believe you're training your bodies, right? You're actually training your brains, okay? Because all the information you give your brain is what it puts back out. You have to tell your brain how to move. The gymnasts know that. I mean, they spend hours and hours on this, okay? And you do in soccer. You train the right way. Remember, practice makes permanent, not better. I had to throw this in. It's you and your phone, okay? You guys were born with cell phones in your cribs. I understand that. You're like the first generation. So the problem with that is you already know some people who have this posture, okay? And you see this, and they're 18 years old. As they get older and older, they get into a fixed position. You do not ever have to become a bent over little old man or a bent over little old lady, okay? It's not normal aging, it's adaptive aging. That's why you need to stay active for your whole life. And see, eventually your head falls off, okay? And then the freshmen come and play soccer with your head. It's horrible, you don't want that to happen, right? Pain. This is real tricky, okay? Simply put, pain is either tissue damage or the fear of tissue damage, okay? And that's an important thing. Never deny, it took me a long time, I've been a physical therapist for a long time. Never deny anyone their pain. Never deny anyone their fears. When I see a person in the emergency room with his back pain, one of the first questions, it takes about 2 minutes to clear them neurologically. It's easy, if they don't have trauma. One of the questions I ask them, I say, how do you think it's going to be in 2 weeks? And if they tell me they're going to lose their job, their dog is going to run away, and life is going to be horrible, they are very scared, okay? They have big fears, and I got to get their fears out of there first. Because we know, as white coats, 98% of the time they're going to be significantly better in 2 weeks. So don't deny anyone their fears, because it's real to them. Okay, you remember that monster that lived in your closet when you were 5 years old? It seemed pretty real to your brain, didn't it? Okay. This is actually, he's a veteran, and he lost his right leg. This is pretty common. So when he lost his leg, no doubt, he had a dramatic pain sensation. His brain has picked it up. It lives in his brain library because now he keeps feeling the pain from his leg. So in this case, that's probably a physician therapist do that too. They're using mirror therapy. So they're making him move his good leg because it's a mirror image of his right leg. So his brain is saying, hey, I can actually not have pain right now. It lives in your brain, the pain. Okay, move or lose it. Remember, when you move, what you do is you're training your brain, okay? Your brain loves that stimulation, it really does. So we have people, unfortunately, who have diseased brains, Parkinson's and multiple sclerosis. This is a boxing for Parkinson's program, and no, they don't hit themselves in the head with this. But we use this because it's very high amplitude movements, and it's very, very vigorous. Because Parkinson's patients tend to lose their ability to move. So we have to train them to move right, correctly. This is Bob the boxer. Bob is doing very well, okay? He's functioning at a pretty high level. The same rule that applies to Bob applies to me, applies to you. Bob stops doing what's keeping him healthy and moving. In about 6 weeks, he's going to revert back to baseline. Okay? That's why the rest of your life you're going to have to stay very active. There's Bob. We actually use dances for Parkinson's too. Because again, dancing is a very complex motor program. Not when I dance, according to my wife, but that's a different story. Okay? And for multiple sclerosis patients, yoga, whatever it is to help them move around again. Okay? They have a disease process in their brain, so what's the treatment? Movement. Okay? Because when you move, you create something called neurogenesis. You make brain cells. That is good, because you want brain cells in reserve as you get older. Trust me on that one. Okay, things you've heard is sort of true. Walk it off. Yeah, you know, you'll find out if you roll an ankle, okay? It's an overwhelming response to your brain. Your brain goes to its library and says, have you ever done this before? You can get up. We do this in emergency room, fractured pelvis, fractured back, if it's a stable fracture. It might hurt the first few steps, but you get better, okay? If you get worse, you can't do that, okay? Don't rub dirt on it. Okay, what this means is essentially you put, how many times have you stubbed, you hit your elbow, you stubbed your toe and you start rubbing it? You're putting normal sensations back into the joint for your brain. Your brain is telling you to do that. For your brain, it says it's okay. Are you hurt? Are you injured? If you had a really hard practice today and you wake up tomorrow and you're sore, okay? You wake up tomorrow and your ankle's the size of a basketball, you have an injury. You need to see your ATC. There's a difference. You have to kind of make that judgment. If this was a pill, we would be all so rich. You know, I'm in the medical community, so this decreases, it's supposed to be death ratio. Death ration does sound kind of cool though, I like that. 46% decrease in the odds of death ratio. 41% decrease in cardiac death. 19% decrease in odds of dying from cancer. Good study from Swain, Penn State University, in 18. You know what it was? What this pill is? Strength training. You could do it with bands. You could do it with body weight. You don't do it with a cigar, but you could do it with weights. Okay. It's that simple. And this study was 2 times a week. They did strength training. There was a population over 50, but it still holds true. Back. This is the formula you're on for the rest of your life. Okay, I have a clinical doctorate, so I'm writing your prescription now. You have to maintain active to be active. You have to do some form of strength training, which you're getting right now, minimum 2 times a week. Okay, that's the duration. Okay, frequency, 2 times a week. We just talked about it. The dose is very different for each one. You guys are athletes, you can do the things at a little bit higher level, okay? As opposed to probably your parents or someone who's 70 years old. They still get the benefit. Okay, where should you get your information? There's tons of information out there. Information is like food. There's some good information, and then there's not so good information. American Academy of Sports Medicine, National Association of Sports Medicine is very good, okay? NATA is the Trainers Association, Physical Therapy Association. This is where I think you should get your information. I like TED Talks, okay, because they have experts. And they have experts in how the brain works. And this is what is really very exciting for me. Bit of a science geek. Since you've been born, we are actually figuring out how the brain works. Well, not me, the really smart people are. Because before you were born, there was nothing called functional MRIs. There was no MRI spectroscopy. There were no positron emission topography. So now they can look, neuroscientists can look into your brain and see what the pathways are. And when we talk about addiction, that's hardwired. That's a pathway. If you have a parent or someone who used to smoke, I'm not an addiction expert, but ask them one question. What would happen if you had 1 cigarette? And they'll all tell you. They would go right back to a full pack a day. Okay, nicotine is extremely addictive. So some of these are, how does the brain take care of itself? Does the brain repair itself? It does, to a large extent. We didn't know that not that long ago. How does my brain work? How does your brain work? I just threw this one up because this lady's on, she does a talk on how you make new brain cells. She specializes in the hippocampus, which looks like a wishbone. It's about 1.5 inches long, and she's written 140 scientific papers on the brain. I mean, this is where you want to get your information. Okay? There's also, as a bonus, when you go to that site, brain on sugar. See what happens with that one. And there's one in there about the mysterious adolescent brain, too. And that's one of the reasons we're here, is because your brain is extremely susceptible for a number of years. When do you think your brain gets done forming? That's a great, do we have the golden parachute? He got that one. We need a reward for that. Yeah. That's a really good one, yeah. Your frontal lobe, where you make all these decisions, it really isn't hardwired to about 25 years old. So, from the time from 14 for that 10 years, something goes, it's called synaptic dendrite clipping. You don't want to know this stuff, okay? It takes away some of the silly things you would do. So early adolescent brain in the world is impulsive, it always has been, okay? Tends to be moody, always has been, okay? Tends to be judgmental, okay? And it tends to be a little bit risk-taking. Early brain, that's why we're here. I think this group beats the South guys, for sure. Okay. Do you have any questions for us? Because I'm standing in your way.
Peter, you got a shirt.
Skeeter. Yeah.
I'll take the
You're almost on weekend. We up to lottery part?
Yes, we are.
Okay, take home.
What we're telling you, and I come from the healthcare community, it's not working well because people don't take care of themselves, okay? You have to take care of yourself. You have great information available to you. You have great resources here. You have to do it for the rest of your life. You're up.
All right, so before we do the raffle, I just wanted to let you know that our coalition that we have in Monmouth County, we go around trying to prevent the use and misuse of drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. We also have a group, a youth group, where they help us do that. They're actually presenting at Monmouth University in November on peer pressure at a teach-in. We do a lot of cool stuff with them. It's really great to add to a resume, and you'll be seeing me a lot. So if you're interested in this, come talk to me afterwards, and we'll hook you up with that. But okay, so because you guys were so awesome, and I think it's a unanimous decision that you beat High School South, we're actually going to give everybody here a gift, but there's one big prize, so which I think is awesome. So you ready? I'm only calling once. Everyone get your tickets out. 161107. Yeah! Okay, so just so you know, it's a sweatshirt, and on the arm it has a arrow going through a diamond, and that's supposed to symbolize moving forward with courage. And on the back it says, "My mistakes guide me, they don't define me," with a diamond. This is what you missed out on. All right, so Miss Liza, should we give them their gifts? All right, again, thank you, you were awesome. And if you have any questions or you'd like to come talk to us, we will be here for the next couple minutes.
Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend.